body. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is being accused of, get this, overemploying Kenyans, with more than half of its 300 workers from Kenya and Ethiopia alone. Yes.
All right.
It matters regional balance there. So
those are the dailies. Let's take a look at the cartoons. And both cartoons on the Standard and the Daily Nation talk about Parliament's action yesterday in absolving or exonerating CS for Agriculture, Mithika Linturi. On the Daily Nation, page 17, they've depicted the House of Parliament inside a boat and with a drowning CS Linturi, bogged down by the weight of fake fertilizer. And from Parliament, a floating device is thrown to the CS. So Parliament has actually saved him. On page 14 of the Standard, we have the CS on a weighing scale, and the special committee saying, as fit as a fiddle. Yes, the biggest discussion. What really happened? Did you expect anything different? Those are the questions being asked. Do you have the cartoon on People Daily? On
People Daily, Stanu's take has to do with matters going back to school and the opening of the second term. They have two gentlemen there as well as two pupils. The Minister of Education, the gentleman holding a briefcase, written Minister of Education, telling the pupils, go to school. No one will chase you away because of school fees. Meanwhile, the school principal saying, go back home and bring the school fees. And just taking a look at how expensive education really is and the state of the cost of education, really. Yeah. Yes.
All right. Now we'll be looking at some of these headlines and a lot more with my panelists later after the break, actually. Today, we're privileged to be having Kasim Tandaza MP Matuga in studio. Titus Lote MP Kachiliba will also be with us, and we're hoping Stephen Disho, former MP Juja, will be joining us as well. You can be part of that conversation online at TV47 News on X and TV47 Kenya on Facebook.
Right. And just a reminder as well, around 8 a.m. we'll talk about matters service design in the business. If you're a startup and you're thinking, how do I really ensure and just craft my business to really fit my clientele? Imran Manji, head of East Africa of Uber, as well as Lynn Munyori, service designer at Marathon XP, will be joining us for that conversation. And stick around also around 9 a.m. For some very interesting conversation on matters fish farming.
All right.
Oh yes, just to know what to do on the whole same. If you really want to have your fish somewhere pale tuko nyumba ka fish pond, what do you do on the same? This is Morning Cafe. 2047 is our SMS number. TV47KE on Facebook. 0795 045 864 is the number to call in live.
All right, time for a break now. Back to school chaos is a big headline, but there's still a mention of MPs being split on move to clear Linturi, which is one of the biggest discussion points, and we'll be looking at that. On the front page of the Standard, schools reopen to JSS teachers strike, but then again a mention of how MPs saved Linturi's CS post again. If we look at the other dailies, on the People Daily, House for Hire, and I think the People Daily has really dedicated the front page to the news of how MPs saved CS Linturi from that impeachment motion, with some MPs claiming that they were approached with an offer of 5 million shillings to save the minister, while others were threatened. Now, this is according to the front page of the People Daily. Meanwhile, the petitioners vow to push on with removal motion against the CS. This morning, we're privileged to have in studio Kasim Tandaza, MP Matuga constituency, which is in Kwale County. Karibu sana. And then we do have Titus Lote, MP Kacheliba, from the North Rift. It's good to have you gentlemen in studio. We're still hoping that Stephen Disho, former MP Juja, will be joining us for this conversation. But let's start from there, because a lot has been said about the conduct of the National Assembly, especially in dealing with this impeachment motion. Initially, the House voted overwhelmingly, 149 to I think 39 votes, to send this matter to the committee. Now the committee comes back and says the CS has a clean bill of health. Now questions have arisen about the conduct of the committee and whether or not Parliament is a house for hire, as written there on the People Daily. Bwana Kasim Tandaza, probably Kenyans do not really understand the processes of the National Assembly. If you could be kind enough to explain to us how these things happen, because such headlines are probably an indictment on the House that you sit in.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, viewers. One, I would want to state that I was among the 11 committee members, the select committee members, who actually had both sides. Because initially, when people voted in the House, they were voting based on a story from one side. And you know it's against our constitution, it's against the rules of natural justice to indict somebody, to make a decision on somebody without him being heard. I think even you, if you're accused of anything here, you would want to be heard, that's for sure. And that is why we have the select committee. But for the process, of course, there are those thresholds which have to be met, which the Speaker pronounced himself before the debate that Honorable Wanin Wamboka had met the threshold in terms of the signatures required, and also in terms of the things, the documents or the whatever he had laid down to warrant such a motion to go through. And of course, the process is that it has to be laid before the House, which was done about 10 days ago. And of course, if it gets more than 2/3, it's supposed to be taken to a select committee. And that is the route. There is no any other route. Unlike in the Senate, because even us, as we were sitting, it reached a point where we were debating, could the Senate approach also be applicable to the National Assembly, where the Senate, you have two routes. You can either nominate a select committee or let the full House sit as a committee and decide on that matter. But for our case, there is only one way route. And I don't want to use the word unfortunate, because, but of course it has come under intense debate whether there can be another route. But fortunately, it is in the Constitution. In fact, when some of us try to get legal opinion with our colleagues, senior lawyers within the chambers, they said it's not only in the Constitution, but it's one of the issues that should we want to change, it has even to go to a referendum. So this is one route that we might have to stick with it for a long time to come, if there will be many other cases, because, you know, again, the process of changing the Constitution, not only through probably 2/3 within the Assembly, but a referendum, that of course can be a very costly route, and also a route that is bound to take long. Now, once it is with the committee have two options again. either substantiated, and it doesn't have to be substantiated on, because it was charged on 3 grounds. It doesn't have to be substantiated in all the 3 grounds. Even 1 ground is enough, once substantiated, that now it goes to the House for debate. The House, again, has 2 rules. It can decide either to agree with the committee that is substantiated and therefore they recommend for its removal, of course it is the president, or they again say, well, the committee says that it's substantiated, but from where we sit now with all the information, all the reports that we've read from the committee plus the charges, we think it is not substantiated. For that case, it falls again.
So just for the sake of clarity, for it to go back for debate before the House, it means that at least one of the allegations has to be substantiated. So if at all none of them is substantiated,
like in this case now,
it cannot go back to
like in this case now, where none, from the committee's point of view, where I sat, and now it's public document, it's public information, and that's why I'm here discussing it. Having found that none of the 3 allegations were substantiated, then the procedure is we take it back to the House, but not for debate. There will be no vote taken about it. But of course, through the Speaker's ruling, and I think those who followed the proceedings yesterday, he ruled that people can air their views on it, can ventilate on it, but not for debate, not to make any conclusion. The thing is done and dusted. But of course, it's like when you lose a close relative, he's dead, isn't it? Whether you do a post-mortem or you decide to, but of course you will want to have a big funeral, you eulogize, you cry if you want, for those who want to make merry, if that you do it. But of course, finally that person is dead. There is no way that whatever you are going to do will resurrect that person back. That is the same case with such the process of an impeachment.
And the concern, Bwana Lote, is that probably this design, the route that Bwana Kasim Tandaza has just taken us through, that probably is designed, and this is just a concern, that it's designed to fail, unlike in the Senate, where there are 2 options where you can go back to plenary. That a smaller team, and that being the only route, is easier to manipulate, is easier to influence, as opposed to the whole House. And do you think that probably is something that needs to be relooked at? That just like in the Senate, an impeachment motion can be debated by or looked at by the whole House?
Well, thank you and good morning. First of all, I want to let Kenyans know that it's not Parliament, because I saw it yesterday and they said that Parliament has let off the CS. It's not Parliament. It's only 7 out of the 11 members of committee that wrote a report.
Representing Parliament.
They wrote a report and said that Linturi is off the hook. It's not Parliament. Yesterday,
it's a select committee of the House.
I know, it's a select committee of the House, but there are 7 members. So I was not part of the report writing. And yesterday, when this thing came out, I think it was very clear that a lot of members of Parliament were not with the committee. They were not with the committee. And it is very clear and fair enough for the media and every other person to know that it is not Parliament, but it's the Select Committee of Parliament. So,
are you saying that if at all it would have been open for debate by the whole House, things would have been different?
Yes. If it was open for debate, it would be going to be different. And I think there is always an easier route of using a committee to be able to discuss such matters and also let people off the hook who have actually committed such a big blunder to the society, and especially the farmers of this country. I come from a place where people farm, and if you can hear the cries of people, it would have been very fair enough for this to be discussed in Parliament, and because when it was brought in for signatures, I think members of Parliament signed, and the threshold was reached, and the reason why it actually went into Parliament for discussion. And when it came to Parliament for discussion, 149 members voted for it, and it would have been a higher number if members had not traveled out of the country, if other members that were willing were actually not also on committees. So probably we'll have actually had close to 200 members signing for this. It basically tells you that the will of the close to 200 members of Parliament was subverted by 7 members, not even 11 members, because there were 11, 4 walked out because they saw the way this thing was going on. So the thing is, if we go back to the history of this country, it will have been very prudent when you're mentioned in such an impropriety for you to step aside. The Public Officers Act, which has been there since the beginning of the devolution, not even devolution, it's been there in this country for some times, will have actually been acted. You remember during Kibaki's time, when ministers were mentioned, the late Saitoti was mentioned, Goldenberg scandal, the Muraria and Kiraitu Murungi, they were asked to step aside first when they were being investigated. We also saw this during Uhuru's time, where even the current head of public service was actually asked to step aside when there were questions, including the current minister, Churchill. They were asked to step aside when issues were mentioned about them, and that is the Public Officers Act. So it became wrong for Linturi to have been mentioned in such a magnitude and him remaining in office. Probably him remaining in office also played a big role for him being let off the hook by the few members.
Do you agree? Do you share in the concerns that a smaller team, a committee of 11 members, is easier to manipulate?
It is easier to manipulate, and I think this is what Senate learned when they were interrogating governors, because governors, there is an impeachment process of impeaching a governor. When this process comes into the Senate, initially, when it was taken to the smaller committees, most of the governors will get off the hook very quickly. And so Senate decided, let this thing be discussed all the time by the whole House. And I expect, learning from this and going forward, that the Speaker of the National Assembly gives the whole House the opportunity to discuss such a matter. Because if you find the farmers that are suffering now, there are those that are suffering not because they wanted. There are those that have actually put a lot of money into their farms and they are not expecting anything, which goes against the will of the president to say that we're going to increase production and become self-reliant in food. Okay. So the minister is subverting the very will of the president, subverting the very will of this country by sitting in office.
Okay.
In other countries, the minister will have actually resigned, and not to say he was not part of it. In any case, why, when the minister came in 2022, why could he not set up a board that was supposed to be procuring fertilizer? He'd set up something that is a concoction of something. Why did he not do what was supposed to be?
And Bonatandaza, I know you don't want to respond to him.
Yeah,
yes.
because
but I have a question that features on the front page of the People Daily that I want you to address.
Yeah.
And this, they're quoting an MP who said that they were approached with an offer of 5 million shillings each, and that some were threatened. And this can only be among the 11 members. So are you aware of such claims? Are you aware of such overtures or threats?
Not from where I sit, not from the information that I have. Remember, this is a motion that started from Parliament, and the facts got them right, that about 140 people voted yes. Were they offered money for them to vote yes at that point? I don't think so. For those who voted no, were they given money at that point so that they voted no? Because it all started from that vote. And I don't think if there were monies which were dished out at that point, I'm not aware of. I've also stated I'm one of the 11 out of the 349 MPs who sat on this matter. I never saw that money. So, and you know, it is just from where he started. He said it. I wish somebody can get an opportunity to interrogate now, to interrogate him and tell him, okay, where, if he got that money himself or whoever offered that money, because he's the one who has that information. Otherwise, just coming around and saying that people were offered money, I don't think it will be very useful. Whoever alleges must prove, isn't it? So he could be having the information. He could have been offered himself. I am not saying he was never offered, but he needs to shed more light on this one. My colleague here is also a member of Parliament. If he was offered some money to vote either way, he can also tell us, because you know that is first-hand information, isn't it? Yeah. If he was offered money to either vote no or yes, he can also explain that. But that be it, we need also to come out with concrete proof. But I would want to, I think Mheshimiwa here, with due respect, there are so many facts that he is actually getting wrong. what we did is as per the law. It does not give any room to the Speaker to do otherwise, you see. So unless now, as parliamentarians, we start the process, Mheshimiwa, of changing that article in the process of impeachment of a president and a cabinet secretary, it doesn't help really.
But do you think that would add value, that probably going the Senate way would actually change some of these processes?
It would add value, because for me, I believe in decision making. You need to gather as much information as possible. And the more people who are brainstorming, you know, when me and him brainstorm here, and when we are 5 of us, definitely we'll get more ideas.
So the whole House would be better than a select committee?
For sure, because of the numbers, because of the different expertise. You know, in a committee like the one you are sitting, of course, we had lawyers, we had others like us, engineers and whatever. But of course, if we were to be a bigger team than even the 11, you will get agronomists, you get agriculturalists, you get, so definitely it would add value to that discussion. So I'm not against. In fact, we discussed that. And that's why I told you right from the beginning, we made a follow-up to the extent that we actually saw to do any changes, it's a constitutional amendment which even requires a referendum.
Okay.
But of course, we can start that process. It is within ourselves, doesn't matter how long it will take. But to me, I think that would add value. I don't think Mheshimiwa was right to say that it's easier to manipulate a committee. It can also be
relatively easier to, in comparison to the whole House.
It can equally be easier to manipulate the whole House. And there are instances where the whole House has voted against, if public, but of course the definition of public can also be is another debate, against the public wish. Could it be that the whole House has been compromised? And I think here it goes down to the values. It goes down to the values and integrity of an individual.
It's not just about the compromise in terms of bribing, but also in terms of influence. That any external person or individual or institute or organization seeking to influence, to exert their influence, it will be easier for them to exert their influence on a smaller group as opposed to the whole House. And that is a concern, that when it is a select committee, it could be prone to a lot of influence.
While I would advocate for the whole House to debate a matter of this magnitude, I wouldn't really say that one of the downsides of a select committee is the influence, because this boils down to an individual. You see, integrity is a matter of an individual, isn't it? If one is a thief, will be a thief whether he's alone or is with the wife, with the children or whatever. But of course, there are also advantages of a select committee, because you can now really take time to interrogate matters. We sit in the same house with Mheshimiwa here, where we are 349, getting time to speak. If you are to give each member 5 minutes, it's long since I did my maths, but how many hours would those ones be? I think you are younger than me. You can
55 minutes, less than an hour.
Hey, I think no wonder now I'm now doubt. Okay, I don't want to go to that direction. Your maths is a bit skewed. 5 minutes, that's 350.
Oh, 350. I thought times 11. Times
because
11
we are 349.
Okay.
We are 349. I was rounding it off. 349 times, just 5 minutes each. How many hours are those ones? And even if it was the full House, how many hours should it be given? Remember, this is one of the issues which also has a rider constitutionally, that it has to be concluded within 10 days. You see, you know, we are going back to the Constitution. This is also a requirement that whatever, even us as a committee, we had to accommodate everything. We had to allocate time to the mover, to the respondent, to the witnesses, so that we conclude this matter within 10 days.
What about the issue of how the committee was selected? Because it was obvious and it was clear how people voted to pass this motion for it to go to the select committee stage. And we are made to understand that probably that is where everything changed, that the number of those people, most of those, at least 8 of those who went to the committees, who were in the select committee, had already voted no.
Before Mheshimiwa comes into that, no. You see, there are rules. You see, we are guided by our own standing orders when it comes to parliament. In a committee like that one, it is the leader of majority and the leader of minority who sit and forward the names from their coalitions or from their parties. So for that select committee, the Kenya Kwanza coalition had 5. No, not 5. They had 6 The total is 11. No, the Kenya Kwanza coalition had, what is the distribution? Because there was Kenya Kwanza, the total is 11. So Kenya Kwanza had 6. The minority side had the 4, and then Jubilee is now recognized as a parliamentary party, so they were given 1 slot. You see, there have been rulings before. We are not debating whether that was right or wrong, but they were given a slot. So Jubilee gave their own person to represent them as a party, and then the Kenya Kwanza side, and that is as per the standing orders. Now, what led Wandai, the leader of a minority, to bring in TJ and the others, that is their own business. The same way, what led Ichungwa now to nominate us in that part. But remember, we had already voted. All of us had voted. So there was no way you could get a committee of 11 members out of those who never, because the standing orders, in fact, are very clear. Okay. So that is the law. What will we have done? Because I had voted no. The problem he had voted yes, and we were on parliament and the rules is that you have to nominate
amongst. He was not part of the select committee. Do you think that probably the selection of this committee was where the problem began?
Well, I think the selection of the committee is by the standing orders, which says that the leaders of both minority and majority give members. And I think that was done right because it is upon the whims of the leader of majority to give members, leader of minority to give members. But I think in between here, when you listen very carefully to the minority side, there were complaints. There was a little bit of a complaint in terms of how of those members were selected. For me, I cannot be able to say anything because that could also be an hypocrisy, because I don't think the speaker forced onto the committee members that did not come from them, despite the fact that they were making some noise, that they were not very clear in terms of how those members from the minority came in. The other thing is for me to just say, in terms of the bribery that is alleged by members, I think those members are supposed to be questioned. Those who actually say that there was bribery, because those are allegations that put put Parliament in very serious repute. I personally did not think I got money from anybody. I don't think he sat actually even on the select committee. I don't think he got, but if he did,
I've said I didn't get
it. But those kind of allegations that put Parliament in repute needs to be interrogated. So if a member comes and alleges that there was money, that member is supposed to be interrogated to give us evidence that there was money. Otherwise, then we are actually painting Parliament wrong. The other thing is just to say, Mheshimiwa Tandasa, I wasn't wrong when I said that we need the whole House to be discussing such matters. I actually said we need to. So I was also on the proponent like you, that we now need to go the Senate way, where we realize that select committees can easily be compromised. That I will be in record to say that. Because there are few people, and we know this in this country, if you got money, if you got power, you will always probably go away with everything. If you're fighting a rich person on a land dispute, most likely the land will go to the rich person. What he does, I don't know. If you're fighting in court with a person that has got influence and money, the person with influence and money, even if he was on the wrong, would always get it. If you're fighting in impeachment of a governor, most likely you will see him or her getting off the hook. But if you're fighting a deputy governor that is broke, like we saw in Kakamega, it's easy for. So in this country, it is very easy to manipulate, because during the day, our businesses start from 8 to 5. After 5, there are a lot of things that take place. I don't want to be quoted, but I think it is something that is clearly nearly known, that if you've got influence and power, you can be able, and the reason why I said it would have been prudent and proper enough for the minister to have actually used the Public Officers Ethics Act to step aside when it was being investigated, because the matters under him, the matters being challenged, are actually matters that affect the people of this country. It is going to affect this country to this year, next year, because next year we're not going to get the harvest that we will have gotten because of his act. So he needed to have actually stepped aside. The fact that he sat in there when the investigation took place actually also tells you that something was not done very right. The last bit of it is about the Constitution. I actually saw the leader of majority, that is Bwana Kimani Ichung'wah, say the process was rushed. And this is from him. He actually also asked, he also presented members from the Kenya Kwanza side to be able to sit in this committee. But he said the process was rushed. I think as a leader of majority, he's not supposed to say the process was flawed. But the fact that the fact that he says the process was rushed tells you that there's some bit of lamentation in him. But it's not.
There are serious concerns around how
they are
the
not a
process
creation
was
of him, because we created our constitution, and our constitution can make us or break us. We created a constitution. We say that such matters are supposed to be dealt with and dispensed of within 10 days.
Within 10 days.
And the reason why the speaker had to call the special sitting of the assembly, just because we have to meet the constitutional threshold. So I think we also need to look at our constitution. Otherwise, then we will always have people with integrity issues sitting in our offices, and because the constitution allows them a very short time to be interrogated and investigated, then we let them off the hook.
Tandaza, a final word on that.
Yeah, I think we need to be also very clear here when it comes to the matters of stepping aside. I think the Chapter 6, the Integrity and Ethics, the Integrity Act is very clear. And this, I think, Mheshimiwa, only applies to a situation where you are being investigated by authorities like the ICC, DCI, because they would want to come to the office, they can get a search warrant to do search and confiscate documents and get information even against your will, you see, and therefore you need to step aside to give that room. For our case, the parliamentary process, we don't have those powers. In any case, we're acting within 10 days. So what happens is we'll only be deciding on matters which the proponent has canvassed, the judges before us, and the responses, and the witnesses. So Wamboka calls the witnesses that he thinks they are going to help him in his case. The CS, though he didn't call any, had also a right to call any witness that he thinks will actually aid in his case. It allows us to call our own witnesses, but again here, I think he's put it correctly. How much can you do within 10 days? Because remember, this motion was brought on a Thursday, and the committee had to be put in place the same Thursday, and we had to have our first sitting that same Thursday, because already Thursday counts as the first day, you know. So from there, you have to give notices for the witnesses. You have to come and allocate time and do that within 10 days. So there are things that we can do better. Of course, even the Constitution should be progressive. The Constitution should be serving us. It's not us serving the Constitution. But that being that is the law. Otherwise, I would want to end up by saying, one advantage of a select committee is that within that time, we also get time. I can assure you, if I'm to ask Mheshimiwa here on what Linturi actually said, or the contents of the document, after all, they were laid yesterday afternoon, and thank God we were not debating it. But if we were to debate it, how many members would have had the opportunity to go through and get the other side of the story before we debate? So people will be vetting out of emotions or out of persuasion from another person. Ama ile tu nasema baba kishasoma mimi nishakubali. But as members of parliament and as intellectuals and as leaders, actually we need to make decisions based on informed information. So the committee has that opportunity. I believe if you were to give me 1 hour, I would expound on that document.
Okay.
Unlike my colleague here, who I don't think he has even read the document. But of course, he had already formed an opinion that the minister is wrong and this should be done. So,
well, the people, I'll give you 30 seconds just to rebut that.
I don't think I did form an opinion as to whether the minister is wrong or not. It is in public knowledge that there is fake fertilizer in this country. It is clear. So it is something that needs to be addressed, and the buck will always stop at the minister. The fact that he created what we call the National Fertilizer Monitoring Committee, which does not have any basis on any law, and then that Fertilizer Monitoring Committee went ahead to procure, is by itself a serious crime in this country, a serious omission.
You see, in Dimuli, this is what I'm saying.
Of the act of the minister. And so, as a member of parliament, Mheshimiwa Tandaza, allow me, as a member of parliament, I actually represent the people of Kenya from where I come from. And I need to step in to talk on behalf of them. Okay. And the fact that the fake fertilizer was procured, and it is in public knowledge, and there's nobody who can come here and refute, basically tells you that somebody needs to take responsibility.
And it should
the fact
be
that you've left the minister off the hook today basically tells us that we do not really care about the Kenyan farmers.
You see, Indimuli, give me 1 minute. You know we need to get the facts. I get him. One, he has admitted that he's not really bothered about the facts. He's bothered about what the public says. He talks of a committee. Yes, the committee was there.
The fact is the fertilizer...
It was the committee formed by the CS. That is what you don't know, and that is why I'm saying us from the committee, even if you ask TJ Kajwang, he'll tell you by the evidence given that committee was not formed by the CS. So if we were to use that as one of the, then it falls, because it was not formed by the, it was done in writing, it was signed, it was not by done the CS.
Okay.
So those are the facts that we need actually to unearth. It was the PS, Ron. And remember,
the reason Wamboka asked the PS to come and give evidence, and he was shielded from coming, was because of the fact that there are a lot of things that are going to be unheard.
But if we know we were not investigating, the PS wrote that letter. The PS is the accounting authority. If you actually look at the way the ministries works, this is the one who has the authority. It's like here, you are MD now, writes a letter. He has all the mandate to do it.
Probing the wrong person.
And he didn't even copy it to the CS. That's why I'm saying there are so many facts that we don't have. That particular letter we are referring to, it was never even copied to the CS because he had the whole authority. So if we are now to investigate the PS, that would be a different matter.
And Wamboka was kind enough to ask
documentary
the CS. Wamboka was kind enough to ask the CS to bring in the PS because these are the things.
Now, surely, how do you ask a CS, the person you're accusing, to bring you a witness? You know, there are some rules of procedure. If you are in court and you have your CS, you are a witness. If the PS was to come as Wamboka's CS, the witness, he should have called him. Did he? Who stopped him? He didn't. And that's why I'm saying we need to go to the facts to make an informed information. Otherwise,
the wrong person was on trial.
Not the wrong person.
Otherwise, the CS also didn't say there is no substandard fertilizer. It is in public domain. He also admitted it. But
not substandard fake.
Who is responsible? Who is responsible? That is the question. And we need the facts. We cannot go by perception. We cannot go by public.
Many questions
I have
on the
information. Go through the document.
Many questions on the conduct of the National Assembly now being asked. And the front page of the People Daily seems to be putting the National Assembly on the spot by this headline, House for Hire. House for Hire. An MP has claimed that they were approached with an offer of 5 million shillings to save the minister, while others were threatened. That's on the front page of the People Daily. This is one of the big discussions today. I want us to move on to another discussion, but still on the conduct of the National Assembly, and this is something that's coming back with the budget-making process. The Finance Bill of 2024 is out. Many questions, many curious discussions about what it entails. The introduction of two things. One, VAT on bread. Two, 2.5% motor vehicle tax. Now, those two items have really caused a lot of discussion, especially online. And probably that is what a lot of the main media has focused on. Now, it raises questions because there was a lot of disgruntlement coming from the Finance Act of 2023. And even some of your colleagues in the House admitted that they probably did not offer much scrutiny to the Finance Bill of 2023. Hence, some of what was passed was not really according to their liking. Now, this is coming just a matter of weeks before you get to scrutinize the finance bill. I think it's already under scrutiny by the Houses of Parliament. And one may wonder, should we expect anything different this time round from the members? I saw the chair of the National Assembly Committee on Budget saying that whatever is not good for the wananchi will be done away with. But we've never seen that happening. We saw what happened with the Finance Act of 2023. It was passed as is. In fact, one of the members said that not a comma or a full stop will be removed from it.
Whether you like the National Assembly, whether you like the Kenya Kwanza government or not, please get your facts right. Even Mheshimiwa will agree. There were so many changes, so many changes from the presentations, having done public participation. There were so many changes on the Finance Act. It was not the way it was presented initially. And this is on record. It's not anything it doesn't require me or any other member to defend. And that is the law. You see, it is not doing anybody a favor. It is the law. It is emanating from the Constitution. So Just as there were so many. Remember, let me get you back to the most controversial issue, the issue of affordable housing. How much was it initially? You can't remember, isn't it?
3%.
And then finally we ended up with?
Well,
wasn't that a change? No, let's go. You know, it can change for the better or for the worse. But the thing is, when you say there were no changes, it was passed as it is. I'm just picking one item, which I think it is important. So the changes were done. The changes, and even with this one, the changes will be done. That is for sure. But again, these are proposals, isn't it? The departmental committees will be actually scrutinizing. They'll be going into detail according to the different ministries going through this budget. I sit on the departmental committee on water. So I have a program for next week to look at these propositions. But I would also say shame on any member of parliament who would vote on a serious item like this one and then come out on the public and say, I never read it, surely. Shame on that person. Shame on, if it is me, also shame on me. Because on what basis am I voting? On who am I representing if I can go to the floor of the House and vote on a very critical matter that is going to affect my electorate and then later on say, we never read? You know, shame on that leader. So my proposition for this 2024-2025 financial bill, can each and every member of us, 349 of us, and most of us have gone to school, read and make our contributions and make our vote based on what you can defend. On
those two items that media has picked on, the issue of 16% VAT on bread and
it's not the first time, Fred, that we have had this proposal of charging VAT on bread. If you go through even the previous budget policy statements, the budget proposals, it has always been there. It is an easier way. It has always been an easier target on how much you can raise on it. And the previous attempts, it has never gone through. I don't think it will go through this time. I might not be taking bread as a person, but I know how much bread is important to the general public. It is easier. It is the cheapest way of having your breakfast or whatever you want to have. So from where I sit, I think I should be able to give other proposals on how we can raise taxes, on how we can collect money, because the end product here is we need to collect this much money. They have proposed. Can we still collect what we want or even more without charging bread, this percentage? But of course, at the end of the day, it will be the majority. This one we also have to understand. I get it on my own way. I'll give my suggestions. He has his own way.
But at least on that one on bread, you do not support as an individual.
But I believe we can still meet our target, and I'll offer those proposals. You know, you can't say, I don't want this, and there's no alternative. Then that way you are not helping.
What's your take on this? Especially on the issue of the kind of scrutiny given to such proposals by the National Assembly.
First of all, I want to laud what Mheshimiwa Tandasa said. In terms of members of parliament passing such a law, such a very monumental proposal without reading through. I think all members of parliament that are elected are supposed to represent their people. Representation basically also means understanding what you are telling the government about your people. And when we say the people, is collectively Kenyans. So any member of parliament that will come out of the house and say, I didn't read, I think that member of parliament is supposed to be ejected from parliament. Two, I think it will be very wrong for us to say that the finance bill 2023-2024 was not debated. And also a lot of changes done.
It was debated.
It was done. Actually, you remember the 3% to 1.5%? You remember that? Where initially there was a levy of 3% on house. And finally, after discussions and debates, it came down to 1.5%. And many other drafts of proposals that were done, and they were changed. So it basically means that the parliament was doing its role, because we went out and we had people complaining. My proposal as a member of parliament, and I think what Mheshimiwa Tandasa said, is that it's not the wish of parliament to burden Kenyans with taxes. It is my wish as a person that we become independent as a country, that we do not depend on external donors. But it's also my wish that this government gets other alternative ways of getting revenues to be able to support the government than just overtaxing Kenyans. You already see the doctor strike. which then a truce was gotten recently. And the truce was spread for 5 years, how they're going to get their CBA. Immediately after that, we've seen the JSS teachers are also now going to the streets. Everybody is going to the government to ask for money. Now with the droughts and the floods that we've seen recently, all our infrastructure is destroyed, our bridges and our roads, and the government requires money to be able to repair this. And if it doesn't, then we will all blame the government for not acting. Where does the government get the money? So we are actually working at a tightrope where the government is supposed to implement and be able to meet the basic needs of the people, including salaries, including confirmation of JSS teachers and many others that are still on board, including hiring a lot of our young people that come into the job market without jobs, and also including repairing our infrastructure. So the government is supposed to do that, and everybody expects the government to get money from nowhere. You see,
there are concerns, and this has been raised by economists on just what you've said right now, that higher taxation does not necessarily result directly into higher revenue collection. That it's been proven, even with the taxation measures from the Finance Act of 2023, the expected revenue collection the government was not able to manage. Don't you think that Parliament has a duty and a role to actually advise government on better ways to expand the tax base? As opposed to just additional taxes.
And that's basically what I've said. I've said, I would have wished that this country become independent. But I would have also wished that the government does not overburden Kenyans. That is exactly what I said. And I think that is exactly what he also said. As members of parliament, we are always open to ideas from people. And the reason why we always go out for public participation. So every Kenyan, every economist, every other independent thinker can come up with ideas that can salvage this country from the burden of taxes. So as parliamentarians, we listen to everybody. It's not us that makes all these laws. We represent people, but we get the ideas and take it to the floor of the house. So if you've got very good ideas in terms of how we become independent as a country, you're welcome to bring this on board. But I think as parliament, we will always say we want to have a country that is independent. A country that is burdened by loans like we've had before is a country that is actually going down the drain, because we do not want to be seen as one of those countries that is going to be auctioned globally very soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Tandaza, it would appear Treasury is running short of ideas on how to expand the tax base. Isn't this, therefore, the opportunity for the houses, for Parliament, to come in and because you're bigger, the number of experts within the house is much bigger.
You see, Fred, it doesn't even limit itself. You know, the budget making process. We get, apart from what we call the normal public participation, where you engage the ordinary mwananchi, we get memoranda, we get representations from those professional bodies. You know, Kenya is ours. Kenya is not for CBK. Kenya is not for Treasury. Kenya is not for Ndungu or whoever. Kenya is not for Tandaza or Mheshimiwa here. Kenya is for everybody. And we have so many professionals and experts out there. And we get their memorandum on each and every item. If it is the economists, if it is the engineers, if it is the surveyors, if it is insurance, all those professional bodies normally make their memoranda. And it goes on to enrich the final document that is presented in Parliament. So yes, we have a lot of expertise in Bunge, but what I could sit here and say that expertise is not enough compared to how much expertise it is out there. So it is the responsibility of every Kenyan, whether an expert or not, to give an input on this one. I agree with her, and I think it's basic. It doesn't have to be really an expert opinion to say that the more you tax a person, the less you are going to get. And in fact, the downside of it is that you encourage cheating. You know, I would want to compare my country here, and I don't want to mention a neighboring country, the one I'm closest to from where I come in South Coast. You know, when it comes to their traffic rules, of course, these traffic rules are international, they're the same. But the way you pay a fine in my neighboring country, it's so easy, and you can pay. You know, when you break, and I think there is a whole raft of 45 traffic offenses which are normally printed on paper, and you can read that this is, you've done this, the fine here is 35,000 according to their currency, which translates to about 1,500 shillings. Then you can pay that instead of even bribing. But here, now you are caught with the same offense and you are told the fine is 20,000 shillings, which you can't even pay, even if you have the money in your pocket. You have to be taken to the court, and you will not walk to the court. You have to be put into the cells first and then be produced from the cell before you pay that 20,000. Then, so these are common sense things. In fact, I don't think they need expert opinion. And of course, it again boils down to us legislators. I think we have a lot of our baskets will be full on what we can do to improve on this country. Otherwise, you cannot continue taxing the same person and hope that will get more revenue.
Okay.
You need to improve the tax base, that is agreed. It is upon to see now how to be taxed, how the taxes are to be collected, because even as it stands, I'm in a position where I think there are some taxes which are being collected, but it costs more to collect than tax than what actually we are getting out of it.
Okay.
You know, this doesn't need expert opinion. But those are the areas that we can improve on. Otherwise, generally, it is our wish as legislators, as leaders, to see that especially the ordinary mwananchi also has more disposable income, not to continue milking out of those who are low at the pyramid.
Fred, I think as one of the ways of thinking where we can get our revenues, and I want to appreciate the government for the measures that are already in place for us to be able to get revenues. But I listened very carefully last time, and I heard that this country, a lot of money goes into West. Offenses in this country are not paid for. And I think what Mheshimiwa Tandasa said is right. People do not pay for their offenses. And I think if government just focus on getting revenue from offenses, I think we can be able to improve our revenue based multifold. Traffic offenses, many other like construction. Now we are complaining about floods sweeping houses, and because people are actually doing the wrong things and nobody's charging them for this. In one of the states in the U.S., they generate most of their revenues from traffic offenders. And this country, if the government just put into place measures to be able to collect revenues from just our traffic, you look at the way matatus are zavatting, or the way they are walking through, they are driving through petrol station, the way they are walking through the shoulders of the road, the way they are overtaking, the way, all this. And the reason why policemen are actually getting a kill on the road, because if you're asked to pay 20,000, you are not able to pay that 20,000. So if the policeman is asking you for 10,000, you will give out the policeman 10,000. That money goes to the policeman's pocket, not to the coffers of this country. So I actually want to say, as a member of parliament, we might need to enforce more on our offenses. I've actually seen in this finance bill, they have put a cap of 22 million for those people who are not going to use the teams. E-teams. That is also good, because there are a lot of people who are actually avoiding to pay taxes because they are not using the systems that will then expose them and how much they are making money. So that kind, and I will tell you, a lot of money is going to come in through the e-teams for the penalties for not using e-teams. And I think we need to increase a lot of our tax now, not on ordinary Kenyans that are law abiding. Let us go to the Kenyans that are breaking the law and get money out of them and build this country.
Interesting discussions here around the new taxation measures as outlined in the Finance Bill 2024 that was tabled in the National Assembly yesterday. That discussion will definitely continue. Time for us to take a break. When we come back, we now want to delve in this debate about one man, 1 shilling, 1 vote, and how that is going to change the matrix in different constituencies. You're watching Morning Cafe. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Cafe on TV47 with me, Fred Ndimuli. I'm still in studio with MPs Titus Lote and Kasim Tandaza of Kacheliba and Matuga constituencies, respectively. And now joining the panel, Stephen Disho, former MP Juja constituency, also served as Speaker of the Kiambu County Assembly. Karibu sana. We now want to move to this discussion, and it's on page 2 of the Standard today. They talk about Gachagua, his many Damascus moments, unexpected endgame. There's a copy of the Standard here. You can have mine. Just help me with another copy of the Standard. The Deputy President, speaking on Sunday, made a rather curious declaration that he now supports the one man, one shilling, one vote debate. Thank you. And I'm looking at these constituencies. Matuga constituency, the last population census, 151,978. Matuga constituency sits on about 1,031 square kilometers.
Yep.
We have Kacheliba, approximately 156,000 population, sitting on about 3,856 square kilometers. We look at Ruiru, which many people have talked about. And they talk about 400 square kilometers, but with a population of over 600,000. I think it's 800,000 right now. Let's even go to Juja, sitting on about 326 kilometers squared, and with a population of about 272,737. Meaning there's some constituencies whose population is way bigger than others. The fact that we've had a delayed review of boundaries means that this is yet to be recalculated. It is a very interesting discussion when it comes to one man, one shilling, one vote. Many constituencies in Central and Mount Kenya region would want this to happen. In fact, that was the main agitation. My question is, how will this affect the other constituencies in this debate? Constituencies like the ones you represent. But from your end, Bwana Stephen Disho, do you believe that this time is ripe for us to have this conversation about one man, one shilling, one vote?
Thank you so much, Mr. Ndimuli. First of all, I want to apologize really for being late to such a very lively debate. I fortunately followed it all the way through, and it was very, very interesting to for Kenyans to hear what the honorable members are talking about. Maybe before I answer that one on the one man, one shilling, one vote, can I just one second to join what they discuss about?
Briefly, if you,
first of all,
a minute.
Yes. First of all, I heard what Mheshimiwa was talking about and what Mheshimiwa was talking about. And let me say this about the Constitution. All the problems we have in this country actually are emanating from the Constitution. Everybody you hear talking about a failure of something, he is hooking or hanging himself on the Constitution. We must go back to 2010 when this Constitution was being inaugurated. And the current President, William Ruto, was the one who led the No campaign, saying it's not a good constitution. Mm-hmm. And then it was looked through, and it was discovered that there are 20% of this constitution that are bad and which needed not to be passed. And Ruto was very clear about it and very vehement about its opposition. But then there was some prevailing situation where even the President Kibaki said, okay, let's pass this constitution the way it is. After we are through with the inauguration, we can come back and look at this constitution and address the 20%, which everybody admitted is a problem. Mm-hmm. My problem today is that President William Ruto served for 10 years as the deputy president with Uhuru Kenyatta. He is now serving as the president. I have never heard him ever talking about addressing the 20% problems in the current constitution. Mm-hmm. And so that is where the problem is. I heard what Mheshimiwa was saying, that all we are doing is in the constitution. Yeah. Is the constitution, and there's nothing you can do about it. But let me challenge the president, who is also my friend, that Mr. President, you promised Kenyans about good governance, and you had the people's back when you opposed the current constitution. You are prevailed upon to let it pass and then address the 20% awful clauses. Mr. President, revert back to 12 years ago and help this country to be to have the best constitution in the world by addressing the 20% that were bad. That is where the problem is. The other point, I heard Mheshimiwa also talking about, because I was a member of parliament for 10 years, and he said, there's no way anybody can be proved that you got something or somebody gave you some money. And I said, if a hyena eats goats, a hyena will always deny that it ate your goat, even if when the blood is on the lips. So we know what happened, and we are very sad. Kenyans out there, they are very sad that we have a situation where fake fertilizer was given to farmers, and then the person in charge of it didn't have even the audacity to resign, or even the president himself to sack him. Okay? But my first training, I'm an agriculturist by training. And I can tell you, and also I'm a politician by excellence. And when this thing came up, I knew what was the game. The total game was that with the fake fertilizer, and Mheshimiwa talked about it, I don't know whether it's you, there will be, the harvest, the produce will be affected, because what is expected to be harvested from genuine fertilizer will not be there. So what will be the result of it? The yields, the produce will be almost by half. So that will result to what? Importation of food. So the whole calculation is about, in 2-3 years' time, when the harvests have been brought down by fake fertilizers, there will be massive food importation. And that is where people will make money. Actually, there's no money that was made in the fake fertilizer. A bag of 2,000 bob, what is that?
There's a bigger plan.
Even if you sell 1 million bags of fake fertilizer, 2,500, or even 10 million bags, that's very negligible. The big picture and the big scandal is where the massive food importation will be done in the next 1.5 years or 2 years. So that is the whole game.
Interesting.
It's unfortunate that we have a situation in this country where somebody has been caught red-handed in the jaba, in the honey jar. He has no shame to resign.
Okay.
And nikimaliza niseme hivi. We have a country that Kenyans out there, you are inside there, we are outside here, Waheshimiwa. There's an issue that was brought by the same Gachagua about a week ago when they were in the Labor Day or something, about the fake degrees, fake academic certificates. And people thought that this is the end of them. And so we thought that on Monday, they are not going to report to work, and that the end of that month, their salary will not be processed, because Gachagua has even a definite number of 2,000, I think 100, which even the president himself admitted there are 2,100 civil servants receiving public funds, public salary, with fake degrees and with fake academic papers. So we thought that Monday they are not going to go back to their offices, and that month of April their salary will not be processed. But what happened? Everything is as usual. Okay. So what kind of a country was Shimiwa?
And I don't want us to go back to that discussion.
We are finished.
So I'll ask us now to talk about this issue.
Let's come to...
1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote. Because it's
I was surprised.
A resource.
I was surprised when the deputy president actually took Kenya by surprise when he announced this in Bere on Sunday. And they said, what? Gachagua was saying this, and if you saw yesterday's social media, there were 2 clips that were being played para passo simultaneously. One, in 2022, what he was saying, vowing by the gods of Mount Kenya, that will never happen in this country. Now the other one is being played saying, I'm leading the brigade to ensure that there is this philosophy. This philosophy was brought for fairness, for equity, for equality, as he said. It is good when, even when the papers are talking, it's a Damascus moment. This is Saul going to persecute people in Damascus. Then he meets with the Lord Jesus Christ on the road, and light is shown on him. And then he changes and he got converted. And anybody can be converted. So we salute Mr. Honorable Gachagua, the Deputy President, for turning back on his way to Damascus and going back to Jerusalem where the gospel started. But I know what you're saying. This thing is critical. It is important. It was designed to make sure that there is equal, and he said something, the more you produce in the revenue, the more you should also be proud back to
numbers,
you.
Yes.
Because of your numbers. So it's not something very big to us.
I'm not concerned about constituencies that have smaller population, like Kacheliba, for example. In comparison to Ruiru and Juja, your population is way much lower. And what kind of effect this kind of push would have on your constituency? Have you considered that? And do you think it's an issue of concern for you?
Well, this is a very big issue of concern to me, and I think we need to be very sincere to ourselves as a country. First of all, let us start with the census. The results of the census. You know it has been conflicting. You know it's been the census. The results of the census. You know it has been conflicting. You know it's been contested, because the census in this country has not been to the effect, it has not been accurate as it's required. And you will note that there are places where their population increases. For me, it was a surprise that in 2009, the population of Kacheliba was 260. In 2019, it dropped to 150. I did not see deaths, but I saw people continually giving birth, in fact, in large numbers. So for me, first of all, I'll contend and say, before even we start talking about one man, one shilling, let us first of all be factual with the information that we're providing to Kenyans. The census of 2019 was a vast in this country. And for us, and especially as we're coming from disadvantaged counties, we were cheated. And I think that is in contention, and everybody knows that. Two, let us think about the development of this country. The one man, one shilling mantra that now the Damascus movement has come to the Deputy President is something that is going to disadvantage this country. If you hear what the President said some few months ago, he said that we need to, and one of the reasons why we've got devolution is we wanted people to decentralize so that we do not go to high populated or high density areas. We need to decentralize into this country, because we are a country where 15% of the population staying in 15% of the land mass. We need to decentralize. For us to do this, we need to develop those areas. How do we develop those areas if we start to concentrate all our revenues into one particular area? And the reason why we have all these high density populated areas is because the first government decided to do what we want to do now. Put all the monies in very few areas and neglected the other areas. And in 1980s, I think the former President Moi realizes that and started what we call the rural development. Why are we starting the rural development? It's because we realized that everybody is moving to places where government resources were put. And people wanted now to move, but the President wanted these people to move out. And so they started the rural development. Unfortunately, and again, who was running the rural development? The people that are well connected who are coming from these areas. And so those resources found themselves back through other means to the places that are already highly developed. So for us to be fair to this country, for us to develop this country spatially and equally, the one man, one shilling does not apply.
Okay.
In any case, let us look. When we found oil in Turkana, is it because of the population or is it because of the resources? For us to be able to develop where it comes from, we've got the titanium. So we also need to appreciate the fact that our land, the entire Kenya, is a resource by itself. So let us build this resource so that we can get our oil from Turkana, we can get our titanium from where it comes from, we can get coltan from West Pokot, Kacheliba constituency, and we develop this country. But if we want to say that let us put all our shillings to where population is, we are going to centralize all our population and we're going to clash this country. We're going to leave other places open and this country will be unequal as it's going to be.
Okay.
One of the reasons why we had the equalization fund is because we realize that historically there are places that we have marginalized, and we say, let us put equalization fund to equalize. So what the Deputy President is saying in essence is trying to reverse all this thing, ensure that all government resources are in a very small place, and that the rest of this country is going to remain undeveloped, which is not very good.
Okay, Bonatandaza, what is your take on this?
Privileged today that I'm sitting next to a former member of parliament who comes from central Mount Kenya, Kiambu, isn't it?
Yes.
And he's still, he's a politician per se. Politics is local. You agree with me, senior?
Of course,
isn't it?
Of course,
so
local.
It sounds good. It sounds good to his people back there. I was assuming was a retired politician to talk about the 1 shilling, one vote, one. It doesn't make sense. And you know that from a Kenyan perspective, you see, should the population, the number of people, be the only parameter to decide on how resources are shared? Mheshimiwa Ndishu, of course, I'm not asking you a question, but this is food for thought as you drive back home. Should the number of people be the only parameter to decide how we share the Kenyan resources? I believe you've traveled this country, despite the fact that you come from Kiambu. You've traveled this country. You've seen what Mheshimiwa was talking about, the marginalization right from independence up to now. I'll give you a good example. And I am the vice chair of the GOtv committee, so I'm privileged to more or less move to all the constituencies to inspect the projects, GOtv project. In Kiambu, if you want to mention, you want me to name the constituency, I will. In one constituency, which has, as you've been reading, a total area of less than 500 square kilometers, has 600 kilometers of tarmac roads. In one constituency in Kiambu, if you want me to give you the name, I believe you are reading
how many kilometers?
600 kilometers. In a constituency with a square kilometer of less than 500.
Which constituency?
Which is that? Because that kind
Githunguri. No, I moved around. Yeah, I moved. Now, let me, you see, okay, you can check, you can cross-check. It might not be exact. You might tell me you are less by 1 kilometer or you are more, you have mentioned by 5 kilometers. In my constituency, Fred, Mheshimiwa and Mheshimiwa Ndishu, which you've read, it's over 1,000 square kilometers. His is over 3,000.
Actually, 4,000.
Mine is over 1,000 kilometers. I have 16 kilometers of tarmac road. Are you aware of that? Since independence.
You talk, I'll reply.
You see, 16 kilometers of Kera Road from Kombani to the county headquarters. Beyond the county headquarters, the other 70, 80 kilometers inside, there is nothing. The whole of my constituency. That is the Kenya that we have now. So the basic question is, should be the number of people, the population, be the only determinant in sharing these resources? Certainly it can't be. Unless we are saying now we want to subdivide this country into, and such, I don't want to go with that direction. You know, us in course, there was a time, tunasema mapasa si Kenya, si ndio? It's out of those utterances where you think that you should be in one Kenya.
Were you shocked by the utterance, by that remark by the Deputy President?
I've said politics is local, but I believe if we are to carry on this discussion, he'll actually realize that certainly this is not the way to go about Kenya. Just one more minute. Already it's happening. Maybe he's not informed. Maybe we don't know, but Mheshimiwa knows. Initially, in the CDF, I'm talking about the CDF kitty, apart from the other kitties. On the CDF kitty, the allocation was done equally amongst all the 290 constituencies. But because of tyranny of numbers, because even in Bunge, if you are to look at the marginalized, the number of MPs from the marginalized areas and versus the number of MPs from the proponents of 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling, they brought an amendment which unfortunately had to go through Parliament. And now, even the CDF allocation is based on number of wards, which translates to the number of allocations. So while in my Kwale County, where I come from, and I'm a vice chair of that committee, we are getting less than $1 billion Kenya shillings from the kit of NGCDF. Kiambu County is getting over 4 billion out of that kit. Are you aware of that? Maybe you'll go and cross-check. Those are facts. So that is already happening. Look at the national budget, and I'm going to be very candid here. I've talked about the road sector, where I'm saying since independence, I'm having 16 kilometers. I have no allocation. I didn't have any allocation in the last budget. The proposed budget, there's no allocation, but we know in some constituencies in Kiambu County, they have over 1 billion shillings of road within a constituency, while in the whole county, you don't. These are facts.
Let's allow
so I think as we go forward, for sure, it can't be the only criteria. Otherwise, we are not going to build Kenya by using just one criteria, which you know favors you.
But we travel Kenya.
Yes.
There's a
so many other
realization
parameters
for the Deputy President that there's Limuru 3 coming up.
I want to be very
week.
candid on this.
Yes. Could that be the pressure for the Deputy President to actually have a turnaround and support something he did not support a few months back?
You know, I'm one of the top officials of organizing Limuru 3, so I'll talk about that. But before I talk about Limuru 3, let me come back to my friend's
Tandaza.
I am a believer that this country of ours called Kenya belongs to all of us. The 42 communities, something like that, 60 million people, it's all of us. I believe that development should be done equally.
Correct.
Completely, there should be no discrimination, because that is that area of the country, because these are this community of people, we are equal. And we come from our motherland called Kenya. The people from Kacheriba, where I have been many times for Harambee with the former MP.
Pogisho.
Yeah, Pogisho, and even my other friend, the one who puts the red cap. Moroto. We have gone all there. And one time we went for Harambee down the valley, and when we finished the Harambee and the meat was being brought, we were told now it has started raining. You either carry the meat with you or you forget it, because when that rain comes from the Kacheriba mountains, you'll not be able to cross that river and go up. Okay? So I said, why? This ought to have, somebody, for all these years, somebody ought to have thought about a big bridge and make sure that this road that connects this part of the country is done well, not to harakisha people. So I believe that there should be a national development without favoritism. It should be equal, because it is serving all the people of Kenya who pay what you call taxes.
Okay.
When my friend Mheshimiwa talks about 600 kilometers in Githunguri, where I come from actually, I would like to bring him to this speed. One, there's a road, some of the roads that are in Githunguri actually are Class C. They are government roads, like the one from Kimende that was made to avoid, it's like the bypass, to avoid vehicles going to the north, coming to Nairobi. So cut it there. It ate our lands. So that is a government land. Yes, it is serving the people of Kiambu, but most of the people it serves also are people from Western Kenya, from Rift Valley, who has got interest in Thika and the northern parts of the country. So it's not exclusively a Githunguri or Kiambu road. The others like this one now here, that also goes up to the Limuru. If Mheshimiwa would like to go to his place and avoid some of the jams around Kangemi, he can pass through Kiambu town, this road outside here, go through Limuru and go out. It has helped. He's not from Kiambu. That is a Class C road. It's, I mean, B actually. So it is not really a Kiambu road, but be that as it may, let me admit that we must develop this country equally for all Kenyans. Now, let me also touch something you talked about, the increasement of bread and the tax.
Unfortunately, we may not have time for all that, because
No, just one meant to say that Kenyans are very upset about that.
There's a question.
Let me finish. I want to remind this government that there's something called French Revolution that was bred by bread. And they are praying about with a Kenyan revolution when they touch on bread. Okay, we are telling people, let's go to Kisii, support Kisii farmers, grow a lot of sweet potatoes, because we might, after all, abandon that bread and see where they're going to get the taxes. But we want to warn this government that there was a French Revolution that was brought by the bread, and this bread they are playing about can bring a revolution.
Okay, and as your final comment, there's a question I asked you about the Limuru 3, because you're one of the organizers, and the Deputy President might have concerns.
The one shilling. The one man, 1 shilling, 1 vote that the Honorable Deputy President talked about actually is one of the myriad of resolutions we are coming up at the Limuru 3, actually to stamp that it is important. However, it is not supposed to disadvantage Kacheriba.
But it will.
No, wait a minute, let me finish. It is not supposed to do that. Actually, Mheshimiwa talked about 260 1,000 people in Kachariba against 150, so he doesn't know which is which. So suppose we agree, we go with the highest figure of 260 and forget about the 150. Is it bad for somebody? I don't want to come to what Gachagua talked about shareholding, but in a company, and that was a bad narrative. I didn't like it, actually, what the deputy president was talking about shareholding immediately after the election. Every Kenyan has got a right to be served. But it's one of the areas that we're going to discuss. In Limuru 3, we are not discussing actually about these economics, these social things. It's about the annihilation. It's about the exclusion. Actually, you are talking about you are bitter about the 1 shilling, 1 vote, 1 man. We are bitter from the same region that actually produces the biggest amount of revenue from being excluded from the same government that we send our money to. That is our biggest issue. That is our biggest issue in Limuru 3.
How much do you want to be included?
You're cutting short, Lote.
Well, I am actually sad, extremely sad that this 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote is coming back to discussion. It basically means there are people in this country that are only dreaming about themselves and not about this country. Because Kenya is not about where the population is. Kenya is about the entire mass. From Nadapal all the way to Kwale, the tip of Kwale. We need to develop this country equally. And I think what the deputy president, changing tune from the thing he said it will never happen, to tune of the thing is I am not even apologetic. I actually wanted to know, is he saying it as a person of Gachagua, or is he saying it as the office of the deputy president? Because if he says it as the holder of the office of the deputy president, then I think he's wrong, extremely wrong, because when he asks for votes, he goes to every part of this country to ask for votes, and he tells them, I'll develop you as this country. So for him to say that is very sad, and I think we will now need to say, probably is not the deputy president for everybody, because even me, I need to be represented by a deputy president that talks about where I come from.
Okay. Finally, Bonatendas.
And I want to answer for the deputy president.
Okay. I don't know whether the PA for the deputy president, but senior Mheshimiwa, I'm glad that I've indicated, because you've said there's this road, it's a government road, there's this road, it's a government road, like 4 or 5 roads within your constitutional government roads. Who said that we don't need a government road in Matuga or in Kwale? We're asking for the same government road. I'm not asking for a private road. There's never been there 60 years since independence. We've not. Yeah, exactly. That's what you are talking about. Yeah, you are talking about the government, because you get monies from the government. That's what I was saying. Now, for how long should that continue? How much is enough for you people? Before you say now you've gotten your fair share.
Okay.
Let's look at Kenya. Let's look at Kenya. You talked about a Harambe. And I think you should not have mentioned it, because you know very well Kenya will never be developed through Harambes. Those individuals. The one which you went to Kachaliba, was it not a Harambe?
No, that was personal.
I mean, eating meat. Oh, it's good that you can travel all the way to go eat meat and not a Harambe. But then, this Kenya will be developed. It has always been done by the government, isn't it? Some areas don't have people because of the government policies which have been there. Not private policies, the government policies which have been there. How do you expect people to be in a place where there is no road, there is no water, there is no electricity? And yet, Mheshimiwa here, Ndisho, from where he comes, every homestead has water, has electricity, there are government roads, and then now you blame the people why there are not many, where there's no water, there's no road. Surely.
So whom do you blame?
The government. Okay. The government, not you as the person. And it's successive governments. Okay. Now, we had reached a point on saying now with this government, we are not going to continue that way.
Yes.
But sadly now, it's going to be worse.
Okay.
But I believe reason will prevail. Probably we'll need prayers on this matter. But as we go forward and we lay the facts bare, I believe even those who are talking about this will actually understand that it's not of our own making that I have only 16 kilometers in a constituency of over 1,000 square kilometers, unlike him.
60 seconds only.
I am a bishop, and I'm going to lead. I'm going to lead in prayers for the better of our country. And I said, I believe. You are my brother.
Yeah, exactly.
If you go to Europe and you see you're from Kenya, oh, this is my brother. If you go to America, from Kenya, I don't care whether you're from Kachariba I care this is a brother now.
Yeah.
Let me finish by saying this. As Mheshimiwa have just said about the Deputy President, I mean, we sympathize with him. I think he has realized, as we deceive out there, that he has been excluded and he has been isolated, and he has realized that even if I stick here, I have got a home to go back to. I have got, politics is local. So maybe the Deputy President is localizing his politics and say, nikipigwa pale as it seems to be the modus operandi at the moment, there is a place I have to go back home. So I must sing the tune and say that, talk the language of my people. Okay. So when the Deputy President is talking about this, he is talking about the language of his people.
Okay.
And I think...
As the Deputy President or as Gachagua?
No. The Deputy President must be a national leader. Yeah. And he must also be concerned about Kacheliba, about Matuga, about any other place. But what I was saying about Nimutete is because inaonekana kama amechapwa sana kule ndani. Sasa ametoka kusema watu wetu nimekuja na ninaimba wimbo wenu.
Thank you very much. MP Juja constituency, also former Speaker of the Kiambu County Assembly, Kasim Tandaza, MP Matuga constituency, and Titus Lote, MP Kacheliba. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Our panelists this morning on State of the Nation, as we look at all the headlines and the big discussion points today. Quick to our editorial comment today. Now, schools across the country cautiously reopened this week amid the aftermath of devastating floods. Ensuring the safety and security of learners must be the top priority. And we say it again. The scale of the destruction wrought by the floods is staggering, with at least 62 primary schools submerged or destroyed. Over 15,000 children are left without access to education. Moreover, the risks of waterborne diseases looms large, posing a grave threat to the health and safety of our young learners. The threat of cholera outbreak is one of the challenges facing our education system, with over 35 reported cases along the Tana River and the potential for further spread as children return to school. Swift and decisive action is needed to mitigate this risk. The damage to toilet facilities, with over 20,000 blocks either sunken or severely damaged, poses a significant health hazard to over 1.5 million school-going children nationwide. Now, addressing this issue is paramount to preventing the spread of waterborne diseases and ensuring a safe learning environment for all beyond the physical toll. The floods have also taken a profound toll on children's psychosocial well-being. The loss of family, friends, and familiar environments increases the risk of child labor, teenage pregnancies, and early marriages. Protecting the mental health and emotional resilience of our children must be a central focus of our response efforts. As schools reopen amidst the ongoing crisis,